Thanks. Have a kiss. Oh, that was right in there. Right.
Just capturing some candid bits.
I don't know. What was I?
Oh, she was the easiest child. She was adorable. We had a terror for the first child, and this one was really easy, lovely, pleasant, sweet. Yeah, just got on with life, didn't you? Really.
Number of different sports, the usual: swimming, dancing, hockey, horse riding. Yeah, which became your main hobby. Yeah.
Very talented, classically trained violinist.
Yeah, until she grew her nails and stopped. You seem to be in a really good place, despite the COVID lockdowns as they were at the time. But as the lockdowns got severe, they were isolated anyway. But I noticed that she was more isolated and losing friendships. But she was getting very angry when we were talking about the lockdowns, getting very anxious, and she'd had a bit of anxiety earlier, but it was managed. But it seemed to be getting worse. And the real trigger point for me is when we took her back to college, and she was questioning whether she should go back, but wanted to. And then the lockdown within a day. So we took the horse, and she got settled in her room, unpacked her room again. And then the government said, oh, schools are closing again and colleges. And we got a phone call, immediately come and collect your child now. And she was so angry and very almost completely withdrawn, not the person we knew, disinterested and everything. And then it deteriorated very rapidly from that stage. So the early warning signs were anger, isolation, lack of engagement, lack of motivation. But once we got past that point, it got a lot worse. But that was certainly, I hadn't realised it was going to go as bad as it
remember
actually did.
Because of what has happened, my brain has blocked a lot of like key moments out. So it's probably going to be handed over to my mum and dad to explain.
Well, we got a phone call in the middle of the night in April, I think it was, and she'd had some sort of panic attack, and they were very, very worried about her, and we needed to go straight to college to pick her up, which we did, and we brought her home, didn't we?
Yeah, that was the first time we heard about the voices. She had a minor attack before that, but it had been managed. And then that was the big one where the college were particularly concerned about her. And then she told us that she'd reported to the GP down there that she'd been hearing voices. And that's when we found out what medication she was on and what level. So at that point, she was very ill, almost locked in her room, not communicated at all, and really not engaging. And you could just see she was broken and very frightened about what was happening. She knew this wasn't right. She would say, this is not right. I don't like it, and I don't know why it's happening, and why won't anyone listen to me? I think initially, off memory, we got through to CAMS, but it was the first time that Mackenzie over the phone spoke to a mentally health trained person. I think they quite quickly realised after a couple of phone calls that actually she was in the wrong referral. That's not a criticism of the GP. She made the signpost, and they re-signposted to early intervention. And there was a couple of phone calls to us and you. And then we were told somebody's coming out to see Mackenzie after those phone calls. So it takes a few phone calls, a little bit of time, but once you're in the system and you've got the right people listening that understand your problems, then Patrick came and had a visit.
And certainly for us, when Patrick arrived, he reassured us that, you know, it was going to be fine. And just to hear, you know, somebody that had been through this so many times with other people, yeah, you're going to be fine. And it was just such a relief, wasn't it?
I think it was the steadiness of it. I wasn't spoken to like I was extremely poorly. It was the maturity that it was come about, even though at that point I really wasn't mature. They didn't speak to me as if I was poorly. It all went at my own pace. My care coordinator didn't introduce family therapy until we were completely ready, and until I was at a point where I was ready to talk about all these different things with my mum and dad. If we got sidetracked in a session, it didn't matter. It wasn't like full on scheduled, this is what we're doing today, and if we don't finish it, we're moving on. It would always be carried on. And if we got sidetracked for half an hour, it really didn't matter at all. And I think that was the good thing about it, because if I was pushed and pressured into doing a full timeline and a schedule, I would have just cracked even more. And I think that's probably the best thing about it. It was, I wasn't spoken to like I was poorly, and it just went at my own pace, which was nice. The first step that Ian took was in individual interviews. We set goals for ourselves. So I set the goals of, I think it was going to Trafford Centre. That was a big thing for me at the time. And to pass my driving test. We each set ourselves just little goals. And that was a good starting point. So Ian could get to know us, and we ended up doing and succeeding those goals quite early on. There was a few which were a bit later on, but it was nice because I could also grasp what Ian was like. I was extremely nervous going into it. I didn't know what to expect. And it was nice because it was just so relaxed and so chilled out. There was no pressure. I didn't feel judged for the little goals that were set. It was, you know, some people might look at it and think, God, how can you not go to Trafford Centre? But to me at that time, going to a cafe was the hardest thing in the world. So it was nice to know that there was no pressure, no judgment, and it was just help, which was really nice, wasn't it?
Yeah, I feel the same. Oh, excuse me. I feel that a weight was lifted off our shoulders when Ian came, because, you know, we had a lot of worries, and we didn't at the time know how to talk about it as a family. It was almost like not an awkward situation, but we didn't want to say the wrong thing. We didn't want to be honest. We were treading on eggshells, and we learned again how to communicate with each other, and that was so important to us. And, you know, it sounds quite corny, family therapy, but to us as a family, I think that was one of the most important steps that we took.
So there's still things which I need to monitor, and I still need to monitor myself with the early warning signs. And if I think that something's wrong, I still need to, you know, text my care coordinator and say, look, I need a bit of help and advice here. But it's a time where I've accepted it, and it's not going to be, there's still things that I have to avoid, and I might have to avoid for years to come, but the things that I'm doing now compared to what I have done and what I couldn't do before or during I got poorly, it's great seeing that kind of that change in attitude towards myself and the other people and activities. Just don't be afraid to tell your story. It can help so many people
Good point.
which thought they were alone or who might be embarrassed. I'm certainly not. It will take a while for you to get to tell your story. But yeah, keep going. You'll be fine.